Derrick Henry and Roquan Smith spoke to the media yesterday, and they had some very bold and subtle comments about the team. We talk about those and a lot more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher, Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day, free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube and audio form, wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to subscribe and follow along there for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I do have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. If you're watching in video form, you saw our Taco Thursday guest, Qadry Ismail, jamming out to the new intro. It's Q's first time here, and I told him I had a surprise coming for him. I don't think he knew what it was. He was a little worried, but it was the new intro. Q, we're 1 week away from the draft. It's almost here.
It's crazy because it's fitting. You have the cool vibe intro coming into the Locked On show, but at the same time, yes, it is about the newness of the new guys that will be locked in and locked on as far as the Ravens next week and filling out the start of this new season. It's amazing how quickly, I guess it goes to the point where Eric DeCosta, when he was asked what happened after the AFC Championship game, he's like, look, I don't have time for it. I had to get on the plane. You know, I'm crying in my milk, and I'm on a plane down to Senior Bowl, evaluate talent. Like, it's here. So, the offseason, the NFL machine, 24/7, 365.
It's exactly what it is. I liked those references, by the way. You were subtle and sneaking those in there. And we're going to be talking about subtle comments today from Roquan Smith and also some pretty bold ones as well from guys like Derrick Henry. But I do want to give you credit, Q, and for everybody listening, Q broke some news to me. I did not know. We just got this about, 20 or so minutes ago. J.K. Dobbins has a new home, and believe it or not, most people will probably believe it, it is the Los Angeles Chargers, rejoining Gus Edwards, Greg Roman, Hayden Hurst, Ben Mason, Bradley Bozeman. Q, those Los Angeles Ravens just keep on growing over there.
I tell you what, like that brother connection, Harbaugh to Harbaugh, there's something to it. You know, we got David Ajabo, and who was up there, Mike McDonald, and all the things that when it comes to, Jim saying to John, draft these guys or take these guys, here you go. Then at the same time, now Jim is like, yeah, I won my national championship. I think I'm done. Let's go out to L.A. And, yeah, he's loading up. He knows there are some guys that John has and John can vouch for. And so, therefore, John's going to go ahead and have him hook it up and make a team out of those Los Angeles Chargers. It'll be interesting because, again, you got Justin Herbert, who is nowhere near the level of dynamic of what we see with Lamar Jackson. Absolutely has an unreal arm, like set all kind of records, slinging the ball around. I am curious because I definitely know Hayden Hurst is going to be, able to flourish in a style that would be benefiting. Clearly, he and Joe Burrow has some good connections, so that's going to be helpful. But the running back / running philosophy of what Greg Roman brings to the table, that to me, I'm curious about.
Yeah, we're going to see. And they're leaning into it, I'm sure. I mean, they now no longer have a Keenan Allen or a Mike Williams. So that's going to be an interesting part of this whole conversation as well. But Q, we did hear comments from both Roquan Smith and Derrick Henry. Now, Tyler Linderbaum did talk as well, but there were a couple of interesting things that were said by those guys, particularly Roquan Smith, and I want to talk about this one with you. The addition of Derrick Henry was a big one, and Roquan Smith was asked about it. He said, quote, "That's huge. I think it's going to make us stick to what we do. Anytime you need to play with him and Lamar back there, I think it's going to be crucial." Now, the part that sticks out to me and a lot of people is I think it's going to make us stick to what we do. Now, a lot of people have kind of put the pieces together, and that being in the AFC Championship, Baltimore abandoned their identity, and it's pretty well known with only the 6 running back carries. What do you make of that comment? Because it feels like the team feels like the rest of us were feeling about that moment, and with Derrick Henry, it's like, well, you can't keep him off the field.
Well, I think you have a season, you go 13-4, your mindset is like, yo, we dominated all the teams we needed to dominate. Yeah, we dictated, but now we got dictated too. And so in the playoffs, that's where, running the ball really matters and or taking advantage of your skill sets, your strengths. Kansas City Chiefs played a phenomenal chess match game. Man, I don't know. I think for Roquan and that defense, they were feeling kind of like, what are we doing here? So with Derrick Henry, you got the Thunder, you got the Lightning with Lamar. Of course, you're going to have 2 other lightning rods as well, whoever they also draft too. But could you imagine, going into December with a healthy Keaton Mitchell, and you just finished looking at, just the big gun in Derrick Henry, and now all of a sudden here comes Keaton Mitchell, and you're like, well, do I key in on Lamar, or, oh my God, and there's Keaton Mitchell running by you for a 70-yarder. Like, all of it. I think that's where, for Roquan, he's saying to himself, look, we didn't stick to our identity. We got away from us, but we're about to retool, reload, and it starts with Derrick Henry.
It does. And Henry was asked about his now time with Baltimore. It's been very short, but he's now in the building for the voluntary offseason workouts. And he said, quote, I really want to hold that trophy up at the end of the year, and it starts right now. And to me, we've seen a lot of Ravens veterans in the building for these offseason workouts. Now, they are voluntary. You do not have to be there. It is a choice. But Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Roquan, Tyler Linderbaum, all these players, even younger players, Zay Flowers in the building, Isaiah Likely. What tone does that set early for the rest of this Ravens offseason? And how important is it that some of the veteran leaders on the team are setting that tone?
Well, the fact that you got veteran leaders, going way, way, way back, way, 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 way back to my day. When you look at the offseason program, it clearly has evolved as far as, different guys and what it means. But it means something when you have a full group of veteran players. Now, that doesn't, guarantee anything other than the fact that you're going to be in shape. And, you can go into training camp with a feeling of like, all right, cool, we're stepping off and putting the right foot forward. I've been where we've been in situations where I've seen teams have full on, everybody fully participating and don't even make the playoffs and have a losing record. So with that said, there's no guarantees, but for a team that has come off the AFC Championship, for a team that has a lot of talent, lost some talent, but now to retool it, and those guys are in the house, that does set a seriousness of like, yo, we're not here, just to think we're going to show up and win. We're going to prepare ourselves to win.
And it's another thing too, especially with Derrick Henry, who is a new member of the team, just getting familiar with his new teammates and the new coaches and just how things work in Baltimore gives him a bit of a head start, which I think is really, really key as well. But then you also look at some of the other comments that were said, going back to Roquan Q. Roquan said that he believes Trenton Simpson has the talent to be the best second-year linebacker in the league. A lot of confidence in Trenton Simpson in Baltimore at this time of year, and they're going to need him, especially because of Patrick Queen's departure. And by the way, Roquan also saying that he's happy for Patrick Queen. He's still his guy, but he's somewhere else right now. War is war. So that's the Roquan Smith we know. Roquan's that hyper-intense guy, and I love it. But we've talked about Trenton Simpson all offseason so far, Q, but seems like these players really believe in him too.
Yeah, I think we saw, some of the things against the Steelers, and it looked good. And that's why you draft young players. Like, it's time to step up. Like, Patrick Queen had to step up and step out, and he did, and now he's got paid. The next guy is up, and I think the only way you can do it is by being trial by fire. I think for Trenton Simpson, he is in a position where guys believe in him, but it also helps that you got Roquan Smith. You got Roquan Smith. That's going to really hide a lot because you're going to get calls and you're going to be like, oh, okay, this is what he wants me to do. Then you're going to go to the sideline, and yeah, you can hear from your coaches, but, oh, this is what you want me to do. Gotcha. Okay. Boom. Now I can go out there and process it. Or this is what I see. What do you see? Yeah. Okay. Roquan said he saw it this way. Good. That solidifies things for me. It calms you down. And if you can get calmed down, you can play fast because you're not thinking. And I think for Trenton Simpson, that's going to be factor number one, being able to play calm, see what you see, trust your eyes, and then use your talents.
And I think the other part of it too, and another thing to what your point was, is that it helps him out a lot that his now defensive coordinator was a former linebacker in the NFL, was very successful during his short career before the injury obviously cut it short. That's another big thing here, where we heard Zach Orr in his press conference say, yeah, you know what, I want to be down on the sideline with those guys and feel the emotions they're feeling and just be in the thick of it. I think that's really going to help. He had a year with Mike McDonald, now a year with Zach Orr. I think that's going to help out a ton. But coming up in the second part of the show, we're going to be talking a bit about the draft being 1 week away, needs, targets, and a lot more. Stay tuned, plenty to talk about on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Now, I've been told I'm a competitive person, and I definitely do have a competitive side. We all do, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends personally. I have a lot of friends that love Monopoly Go, and I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself, and the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostraker is still here with Qadry Ismail talking Ravens football. Q again, draft 1 week away. Ravens have pick 30. You know, a lot of people say it's the beginning of the second round anyway. It's right up against it. But there's still going to be really quality players available there. The Ravens can still get a difference maker. Where do you personally feel like Baltimore should go? We've talked a lot about offensive line, a lot about corner, a lot about edge, wide receiver. Or do you want them to just go best player available? Although, obviously, that not being a quarterback or any crazy, it's like tight end position. The Ravens have done both, but what would your preference be?
Well, I think if the history shows us when you are in a position to have your board set and you've identified the top 100 players that you feel like, hey, man, these guys, if any of these guys are on the board, they're going to be picked by us. We feel really good about that. I know one tweet you had sent out as far as all the different second round picks. And gosh golly, I think there was really only two guys. I think it was like Qadry Smith and Kelechi Osemele that I was like, man, these dudes, they were on point and they looked good. They looked apart. I thought, you know, from a free agency standpoint, the way they were able to kind of get their bags, if you will, just kind of showed those two guys in particular. But then there were also other guys that, you know, weren't so hot. And then you look at, you know, obviously some of your comments sections where people be like, yeah, but so-and-so was there. Nah, nah, nah. And it's funny because you're right. You know, you gamble, you do all this due diligence, you do all this, leave no stone unturned and all the things. And then next thing you know, you wind up like, okay, we missed out on Derrick Henry when we could have had a Derrick Henry and all the things. So, yeah, I think as long as we're in a position where you have quality guys, it would be best player available because that's what the Ravens do. And so if it's in that top, so their board is going to be different than the Titans board or, you know, the Chargers board or the Cowboys board. Everybody has their own idea who top 100 is. But with that said, you're going to have your favorites, and other teams are going to be kind of a cross-pollination. It's when you get to your pick and you see all these other guys that are on your board, that's where you get fancy with the spices. And like, we could trade out, and because we know that guy's still going to be there. I think it was a genius move as much as, we want to say, oh, Lamar Jackson, we knew he was going to be. You really didn't know, but Ozzie knew enough to know I did my due diligence. I can still get him. Nobody else really wants him, but we going to get him, and we going to take him, and we're going to have our franchise quarterback. I think that's where the fun of, the gamesmanship for Eric DeCosta comes into play.
Yeah, and I think for me too, it's almost about, if you have a guy on your board, but he's a second-round guy, and then you reach for him in the first round, it's just not a good use of draft capital because there are going to be other opportunities. And again, like for Kyle Hamilton, Q, that's someone we talk about a lot, is the Ravens had no need for a safety in that draft. But a player like that falls to you, a talent like that falls to you, and you essentially draft him and make it work. Like that's what you have to do in that situation. So it's a balance. And I think a lot of teams have mastered it, but the Ravens have been one of the teams that have mastered it in the best way. Now, in terms of trading back potentially from 30Q, it wouldn't necessarily mean that they're going to move from 30 to 60 or do something crazy like that. You could essentially move from 30 to 33, 30 to 34, 30 to 35, pick up maybe a top 100 pick or extra 2025 capital, and still have a guy that you take at 30 or maybe multiple guys you take at 30 there. Now, you lose the fifth-year option. That's something that is a conversation point. But the Ravens have 9 picks. We know Eric DeCosta loves moving up and down the draft board. How likely is it that maybe Baltimore moves away from 30 and tries to get some draft capital?
From a draft capital, every time I hear that now, I'm going to be thinking about, what was it, the Bisciotti plan?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. He's going to be sitting there like, okay, Eric, we got capital. Now, if we trade out and then we keep building, we can get the number 1 pick. So I love it. I think it's weirdly ownership creative. And hell, when you own the team, you can do whatever you want to do. But I think also at the same time, hopefully he's smart enough to realize that, yeah, you do have a lot of draft capital. Sure, it's cool to fill up your roster. And it it's kind of interesting too, because again, you're in now that franchise player mode. So you're going to need a lot of, inexpensive. I'm not going to say the C word, but inexpensive players, because they're still quality players and they could turn out to be Hall of Famers or, Pro Bowl or all pro players. So it's not the C word, but, the inexpensive as far as just the business side of it all. I don't see anything wrong with having a lot of picks and filling up your roster.
And that's what it has to be with a post-rookie contract, Lamar Jackson. And it's not all about Lamar. Obviously, they've signed Justin Madubuike to a big contract extension. We're going to see big extensions coming down the pipeline, hopefully, for guys like Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum and all those types of players. So it's just when you have that big of a contract plus other really big contracts, it's more important that you accumulate draft picks and hit on essentially what they call cost-controlled contracts and get guys on 4 or 5 year deals at premium positions. Now, speaking of that, Q, I think that there has been a lot of conversation about the offensive line and how important that is for them to fill throughout the draft, maybe multiple offensive linemen. In fact, I would not be shocked if they take multiple offensive linemen here. But in a scenario, would you rather have a first-round tackle in some combination of Ben Cleveland and Andrew Voorhees, or would you rather see them take a guy that can maybe kick inside in the first round and have some combination of one of those guard spots and Daniel Falele?
I'd rather have the tackle Voorhees combo with Ben Cleveland because of the fact that Ben played last year, had some good reps. I think Voorhees will be caught up to speed. I think at the same time, from a tackle aspect of things, every team is going to have, their eyes on some level of tackle. I think when you see guard and what potentials there are with that, I'm hoping Falele, he's a mountain of a man and all the things, but it comes down to his technique and whether or not he can, really bend. Hip strength and all that entails is hypercritical. So, yeah, I think if he can, be that guy, and that's where that offseason look comes in, and like, all right, cool. We feel like what he has shown has given us progression and freedom to go ahead and go, guard and not worry about it. So that's like an in-house, understanding that we on the outside don't have. I would tend to say tackle, but again, they might know. Well, they clearly know something we don't know.
Right. And I mean, the Ravens understand they have a need there, and they also understand that they're going to need some of their internal pieces to step up. It's not just going to be they take 3 offensive linemen in this draft and then plug and play 3 rookies. Obviously, I think there is a good shot that they're going to plug and play a tackle, but you're going to need guys to step up, and there are going to be training camp battles. And Daniel Faalele is going to have an opportunity to win that right tackle job, as John Harbaugh said. So we're far from a solution to that offensive line, but I do think that there are opportunities, not just for the rookies that come in, but for the guys who've already been with the organization for multiple years at this point. Coming up, though, we're going to be talking a bit more about the draft, also getting into Lamar Jackson and I guess now it's a controversial side-by-side about his body and a lot more. Stay tuned, plenty to talk about here on the show. First, this episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom, right? Well, with Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. Comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insights to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For every comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. Q. Let's just dive right into the Lamar Jackson conversation, because that's the one that everybody's talking about right now. Lamar shows up for voluntary offseason workouts. Now, we know he was not there last year because of a certain contract situation. So very glad we have that in the rearview mirror. We can just kind of focus on the football aspect of stuff that's not contractual. I know you and I were salary cap experts last year. But Lamar comes in, and to me, it looked a little different because we saw Lamar, I can't remember exactly. It might have been 2020, 2021. He really started to bulk up. We saw the muscle, the body transformation for Lamar. But then the picture of him walking into the castle from that video seems like he did slim down a little bit, shed some of that weight, shed, I guess, some of the muscle as well. And even if, the picture was weird with lighting, or if there was just some aspect where it's overreaction, I'm not going to put all the stock in one picture, but it does raise the conversation, Q, of preference for Lamar first, obviously, in terms of what weight he prefers to play at, what type of body he prefers to play with. But for us kind of thinking about it, do you feel like Lamar is more effective both as a runner and as a thrower if he has that muscle on him? Or do you feel like him shedding that weight, maybe back to the 2018, 2019 version of him, would be more effective?
He even said it himself, because somebody asked as far as like muscle mass and what he had put on as far as weight. And he was like, I just didn't feel as good, which ironically enough, I'm going to vent, because that was one of the things that I was saying as a sports performance coach. It's about movement more than muscle. I know when I put that post up there, it kind of got like twisted in the minds of the Lamarites. The next thing you know, it was, you're hating on him. He can't, what do you know? Well, from Lamar's own mouth, he didn't feel as explosive, didn't feel as good, and he kind of just left it at that. But what I understand it to be true is that, you're in the business of playing football. You're not in the business of being this big guy just for the sake of being big. Like if you're Looking to be big? All right, cool. Then be in some level of a bodybuilding situation. But Lamar needs to have a live arm, be able to sling it around, have a lot of elasticity. At the same time, from an elusiveness standpoint, he needs to run away from guys because a Lamar Jackson who is explosive is a dangerous Lamar Jackson for defensive coordinators and for those linebackers at that second level. Once he gets past that second level, then it's like, oh my God, what? And you see the brilliance of Lamar Jackson. So I think all those things factor in. You can still have good strength with a good diet. You can still have good recovery with a good taking care of yourself from a dietary aspect as well. And that's where I think for Lamar Jackson, that's the next evolution for him to stay, at a weight where you could be explosive, not necessarily be weighed down by extra muscle mass just for the sake of extra muscle mass.
And we're talking about this in mid-April, Q. So obviously there's a lot of time still before the season starts. Is there still more that Lamar can do with his body? I mean, obviously we're months away. What do you think if he is trying to get back to the 2018, 2019 version of himself in terms of his elusivity and the body type? What else can he do for his body to make sure that he gets there, but also is playing at a comfortable weight for him?
Well, the main thing is speed. I mean, the speed of the game is what separates him. And again, his elusiveness. So as long as his arm stays live, what does that mean? No overmass that, you're looking Tim Tebow-ish. So you want his arm to stay live and stay explosive through the tendons and the musculature. With that said, I think the speed endurance is really what you're looking for in the off season to kind of build that up so he can have his legs underneath him. So yeah, he can either A, make plays down the field, or B, when it's time to be thunder and lightning, well, lightning is going to strike, and you're going to see that MVP 2018 Lamar Jackson, where he's running by not Philly, but Cincinnati Bengal defenders and making them look silly.
Yeah, the he is Houdini moment. And again, Lamar, even though he has added weight, added muscle, it's not like he hasn't been elusive or explosive or electric. He still has had that. But I just think for him, it's a matter of getting back to where he wants to be. And even, with Derrick Henry now in the fold, that is your bruiser muscle guy. And I think if you can add some of that speed back, and we saw Lamar get tackled a lot from behind last season, Q. I mean, even in that AFC Championship game on that fourth down play where he essentially beat everybody, but he didn't feel comfortable enough getting away from L'Jarius Sneed, so he tried to back juke him, and Sneed obviously caught him. It felt like 2019 Lamar would have just taken the sideline and have been gone. So it's subtle things, even on the wild play where the ball got batted up in the air and he caught it and then started zooming off, but he got shoestring tackled. Again, I think a lot of people said, oh, well, 2019 Lamar would have taken that to the house. So it's just the extra maybe 0.1 seconds or 0.5 seconds. It can make a world of difference there. But now it's time for your favorite topic of conversation. I'm excited to talk about you with it, and that is talking about potential veteran wide receivers coming to Baltimore. I know it's your favorite. We did 5 straight shows on DeAndre Hopkins last offseason, and I know by the end of it, you're like, come on, we're still talking about this guy. Courtland Sutton is the latest name. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk has been in the news as well, but he shot down any trade rumors. So, I mean, I guess we can incorporate it. But Courtland Sutton did not show up to voluntary offseason workouts as he's looking for a new contract. And, of course, everybody's talking about, well, Lamar has not had that guy traded for him yet as a veteran. Courtland Sutton fits the big-bodied outside wide receiver mantra that a lot of people are looking for. Now, the contract is about $13 million in base salary for the next 2 seasons. But as we talked about, you'd have to give up some draft capital. You'd have to probably extend him as well. Are we at the point in the offseason now, Q? The Ravens have 5 out of their presumed 6 wide receivers. The draft is coming up. I assume they're going to add one there. Are we past the point of another veteran at least, coming into the wide receiver room this offseason?
Well, I don't think we're past it. I think it's more along the lines of if it really fits. So patience, obviously, for the Ravens can be a virtue. What I mean by that is that once those rookies come in and you get into a situation where you see the young crop, you can kind of make a decision, be like, all right, are we going to just roll with who we got veteran wise? Because Rashad Bateman is a veteran. You got, tight ends that are veterans and really, 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 really good. I think at the same time, you look at what you got in Nelly, you look at what you got clearly in I got Zay Flowers. So in my mind, it's not necessarily a pressing need. I think last year, you did have that need, and it did make sense, obviously, to get Steve Bisciotti and Odell to kind of talk amongst themselves, and finally a deal gets done. I think this is a little bit different. Doesn't seem as pressing as it was last year.
Yeah, and to me, the wild card to me is, I think, Deontay Hardy. How much do they envision him in this offense? We talked to you about, just what everything is with that signing.
Yeah.
And it's primarily more for special teams, obviously,
Yes.
but there is some component. But that's another guy who, again, Deontay Hardy's 5'6", Zay Flowers is sub 6 foot. I believe he's sub 6 foot. If he's probably 6 foot. But I mean, I am also sub 6 foot, by the way. So I am in that conversation. But again, it's more like the skill set that Baltimore needs, the bigger bodied outside receiver, contested catch type of player. And right now they don't really have that on their roster. So in the draft, I assume they're going to be looking for a guy like that. And then maybe if they do feel like they want to keep 7 guys, maybe another veteran does come in to the building. Q, I appreciate you though. Thanks so much for your time on the show. As always, please take some time to tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, it's missiletraining.com, because if you want to get trained, doesn't matter the age, literally from 6 all the way on up to 84. My oldest client, my guy, he just gets it done and love his energy and attitude. But at the same time, when it comes to finding me, you can just go ahead on my website at missiletraining.com and we can have a conversation and a dialogue in that regards. When it comes to Locked On Ravens, obviously I'm here with my guy, living large, KO, living out there. I'm out here. We're together with you out there. But then when it comes to telly or we have multiple shows, WJZ, I'll be on my Purple Passion, and during the season it'll be Purple Pregame shows that you can find me on.
And again, as always, all those links in the description below. Check Q out over at his website. Follow him on social media. You can see the X handle down below at I am Qadry Ismail. You can follow me over on Twitter at ChaosStriker34. I called it X and Twitter there. It's one and the same, X and Twitter. Also on Instagram as well. You can find us on Facebook too, everywhere. But again, be sure to check out all that Q does. And be sure to subscribe here on Locked On Ravens to the show, both in video form and in audio form, 4 or 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Coming up tomorrow, I'll be rounding out the week with more Ravens content. Stay tuned. I'll see you back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.